Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Gospel Tech Podcast. My name is Nathan Sutherland. I'm excited to be with you today. And today we are going to be addressing this concept of making our smartphones a dumb phone. The idea is going to be looking at what areas might our phone be distracting us from our purpose and our potential, and where can we then lovingly and hopefully redirect that attention. So what this conversation is not is here's a bunch of ways you're messing up and be more like me. This is gospel tech. And so this is talking about, all right, the gospel says that we are loved and created for a purpose, that our hearts are already bought and paid for by Jesus, and that our lives and our time are no longer our own. We are actually living out the number of days we have here on this earth to God's glory, which will be to our good, but not necessarily just to our pleasure, right? There are things that we are going to experience that are part of this broken world on behalf of Jesus, who already experienced all of our brokenness for us, so we don't have to live that out for eternity, right? We're not getting what we deserve. We are instead adopted as children of God. Because of that, gospel tech means sometimes our right hand causes us to sin, or our right eye causes us to stumble, and therefore we cut it off, gouge it out, not because we are some kind of purists or we're ascetics that are going to run away from the world, but we're going to live in it, but not of it. We're saved for the world, not from it. And what that means for us is if there's something that causes us to turn our eyes off Jesus, to forget the hope that we have been saved through and saved for, then we remove that thing. For some of us, that might be our smartphone. And if that's you, or that's like it is for me, there are actual practical steps we can do to live out our faith, right? Philippians 2:12, live out your faith with fear and trembling, is not a suggestion. It's what we're supposed to be doing. And that fear and trembling means we take action, right? We live out the faith we already have. So we're not trying to impress God. He's not going to be like, wow, you never got a smartphone. You're great. Some of us actually will be very self-righteous in taking some of these steps, and we're going to have to pray through that. It doesn't mean don't take the step if you need it. It means take it prayerfully and take it from a spot that's going to help you. So I'm excited for the conversation. I think you can hear there's already a lot of context we're going to build, and this will kind of be a multi-parter. Today, we're going to look at how to make our smartphone a dumb phone. We're specifically going to go 4 ways to do that. But before we do, let's actually get this podcast started. Welcome to the Gospel Tech Podcast, a resource for parents who are feeling outpaced and overwhelmed as they raise children in a tech world. As an educator, parent, and tech user, I want to equip parents with the tools, resources, and confidence they need to raise kids who love God and use tech. I wanted to get into some housekeeping. I got a little bit on a roll there. So the housekeeping is our listeners, people who have given us reviews, who have rated this podcast. Thank you so much. Thank you to all of you who continue to listen. That's amazing. And to tell your friends, because we see more people showing up and listening. So thank you to everyone who's doing that. Your comments are super encouraging and challenging. We love the questions you guys are sending us about maybe nuance or things we thought we explained well. So this is actually where today's comes out of, all right, like we heard kind of the 4 big questions that parents have. One of them was, should my kid have a smartphone? But what should I do now, right? So this idea of a dumb phone kind of extends from that of, all right, let's say they have a phone. What can we do about that? Or what are some other phone options? So the next couple podcasts will actually apply to that. So thank you for those thoughts and reviews. If you've not yet, please do go on, subscribe so you get the new episodes sent straight to you. Then also leave us a comment or a review. It is super helpful for us and it helps other people find us so we can continue to be a useful resource. If you want more information, if you can go to flintandiron.org, which is our website, and then Parent Resources is where we kind of keep our articles and blogs and additional thoughts and reflections. So you can go there for more resources. We also have our tech coaching on there. So at the top, you'll see tech coaching just at the top of the main homepage, and you can actually sign up directly onto my calendar, and we can do 30-minute sessions for just family tech coaching, where we'll kind of begin the conversation of what does a family framework look like and how do we apply the gospel so that this becomes more than just good information we're getting, but we're actually starting to apply it now. And finally, if you hear anything that prompts a question, again, questions are awesome because they help you guys and it means you're applying the information, but it also helps us because it makes sure that we are doing more than just monologuing. This is actually a conversation. And because the modern world we live in is so busy. Podcasts are an awesome way to have that conversation when it works for you. So please do reach out. You can go Flint and Iron on Instagram, and that's just at Flint and Iron. You can go Nathan at flintandiron.org or Sparking Purpose on Facebook. So with that, we're going to start off with some icebreakers today. So we're in a podcast, so I love hearing what people like to do and like to participate in with podcasts. So I would actually love to hear from you guys. If you want to send a message and say, hey, this is our favorite podcast right now. I'm always looking for something awesome. I have really enjoyed, Anna historically has been into the How I Built This podcast. So it's basically interviews with tons of people who have made companies that you just kind of think of as name brands. So Dyson, right, is like the massive vacuum company that you're like, oh, that's cool. Well, he was making wheelbarrows and went belly up like twice, basically, in his business, double mortgaged his house like crazy. The people who made the Muppets, just a huge Stitch Fix, a huge broad range of businesses. So I've enjoyed that one a lot recently. And I just this last week found a cycling podcast I really enjoy. I am not an avid cyclist, I guess. I like cycling. I'm not great at it. I don't know what you would call that. But I really do enjoy it. So Road Trainer is a podcast basically made up, Trainer Road. Again, I found it this last week, so please forgive me. Trainer Road is basically a bunch of former pro or actively pro cyclists who talk to you about how to cycle better. So I've enjoyed that. It's actually been one of the few things I get into podcasting because every once in a while, yeah, I love to hear about people doing stuff that I enjoy, but they do it way better. So that's cool for me. Books I'm reading. I'm actually right now, my grandfather was in World War II, was in the Lighter Than Air program, flew a blimp, and was a nighttime bomber navigator. And he left me a book called, I think it's called The Crusade in Europe, which I thought was a weird title, but it's written by Eisenhower, basically talking about like from his autobiographical perspective. Here's how the war went down from his first days in the military, walking through the entire war. So Papa left me this book, and I was like, I'll just kind of read it. And it was really interesting. I'm about a third of the way through, and Eisenhower just explained why he's calling this a crusade, which is a pretty loaded word, and he acknowledges that. But he basically says they had captured in North Africa, they had captured 240,000 Nazis in this campaign that went better than expected. And one of the Nazi general of that theater had asked to meet Eisenhower. And basically up to that point, what was expected was through the 1800s and early 1900s, well, we're all soldiers. We're really just fighting because fighting is what we do. So it doesn't matter what side we're on. We're all kind of buddies anyway. So if you get captured, you can call on the other general and basically have dinner together and hang out. And Eisenhower documents, like, I realized at this point that, like, I don't see a world where these individuals with this mindset and my world can exist at the same time. So we're not just going to like be buddies. Like, I can't have Nazi Germany and a free world. Like, those aren't two things. So that was where the idea of total surrender, complete surrender. This wasn't, we're going to get a truce worked out where like we agree to disagree. Like, no, like we're only doing this war for total surrender. And this isn't like we're buddies and we're all just really, we're on the same page, even though we're on different sides. So he never met with a general. And I've really enjoyed just kind of seeing some of that perspective from someone who was in it and didn't have, like, we've built up World War II in the last 80 years, recognizing how massive this was for America. He's writing this 3 years after the war, just trying to document his perspectives out of journals and notes. So I've really enjoyed that. The history nerd in me is really having a lot of fun with it. So if you fell asleep in the last 3 minutes of me talking about it, I do apologize. I don't have Anna here to tell me that I'm nerding out too heavy. So my apologies in advance. Today, again, we're going to talk about more of the tech side. So last week we were really gospel heavy, and we just talked about how do we raise kids who love God, gospel. Today we're going to talk about how do we make a dumb phone, tech. And we're not just leaving the gospel behind, but I wanted to take some time just to really focus on it. So I think the first thing, there's going to be a lot of layers. I do just want to set this up. This is not a conversation we can simply have be done in one day, but what we're focusing on today with the dumb phone is this concept that a smartphone is not really a phone. We need another name for it, but while we're calling it a smartphone, smart usually means all the other stuff it does. And so when we talk about a dumb phone, we're talking about, all right, a phone that literally just does phone stuff, right? Just the basics, the tool side. How do we strip away the drool side? All the things that are embedded in that are distractions and that are not just accidental, not just, man, I don't have enough willpower distractions, but they're designed this way. And I'm setting myself up for, at best, a distracted amount of focus, right? I might still get stuff done, but I'm constantly having to combat bad habits or poor decisions or distractions that are being thrown at me versus a dumb phone where I go to this thing, I do what I need, I go back, right? I've never been distracted by like a hammer or a drill. Like I pick up that particular tool when I need it and I put it back. Like I don't just carry it around with me for fun. I keep it when I'm in an area where I might need this tool, and then I leave it when I'm no longer in need of that tool. So that's kind of the big picture of where we're headed today. But yeah, it is a tricky conversation. So here's why this matters. I think it's easiest to start when we talk about our kids, right? Like, darn those kids, get off my lawn. As a general rule, we're getting this concept from Andy Crouch. We've mentioned him a lot, but it is, again, one that applies well. So we're going to give him credit where credit is due. Talking about basically not letting our kids have personal screens, so their own laptops, their own tablets, their own phones until they hit double digits. So that's kind of his, until 10, they should only be using your device if there's an appropriate time for that in your family, not have their own. When it gets to double digits, the idea is then we're going to start having this conversation of what does it look like. Often in that conversation, you're going to bump into this argument of, well, I need one. And I think that is an idea I like to push back against of, well, what do we mean by need? So I was even talking with an educator who was saying, yeah, in our little kiddos class, in our kindergartners, we are using laptops to learn alphabet. And we talked a little bit about what that looks like. And they're like, well, there's clip art. And we kind of click through on what the right answers are. And the kids really seem to enjoy it. And they're like, all right, that's great. That's not a need though, right? Like if you want to do that, that's fine, but please don't mistake what you are doing as a need. That can be just as easily done on a felt board or a chalkboard, like a piece of paper that they actually cut out with real scissors and then glue on and get some of those tactile skills that actually are developing motor training and showing you kind of where these kids are in their preparedness for writing even. Selecting off a keyboard by hunting and pecking a letter that matches a single clip art image is fine. It's not going to probably hurt the kid, but that's not a need. And we do that a lot with our tech conversations. You're going to have your children come to you when they're 10 and say, hey, I'm 10, I need a device. And that's the conversation you're going to have is, all right, when you say need, let's walk through. What do you want to do? How are the ways that we can do that, and which ones have the most benefit? There are definitely some ways where phones are a huge benefit. And there's some ways where they're really not, and we just kind of like them, and so we tell ourselves we need them. And we'll get to that in a little bit on how we can test that theory. But in this piece, let's go with 3 reasons when we talk about should we give our kid a smartphone and should we make it a dumb phone. There's 3 reasons to not give our children a smartphone before 10 and to really delay it after that. It's not because we're scared of anything, but really here we are. The first is that there's minimal benefit to having a smartphone in the hands of a younger child. I would say right up till 16. 16, 17, we can start talking that kid's coming up on adulthood. We have a couple years left to actually start training in some of the conversation and some of the habits. It's not an unfettered smartphone. It's not, well, as long as you buy it, you can do whatever you want on it. That's just not the way that works. There are still expectations for being part of our family. We are still their parents and love them. When they're an adult, they're going to be held directly accountable to God, and we're going to support and encourage and challenge them the same way we always have. Right? It's just going to be to an adult now, not to a child. And that's, that is the kind of conversation we're going to be having with our kids. The minimal benefit is there's really no evidence that having a smartphone is uniquely beneficial beyond anything that could be done in regular life. We're talking smartphone with all the capabilities that thing has. The one argument you will hear is, well, it opens their worldview. It connects them to, a world of people that they never would have known, which there is a lot to be said for getting experiences in the real world that make you realize how small you are, how finite you are, how huge this world is, and how God is amazing and works in all sorts of situations. It gets rid of kind of that illusion of I'm normal and other people are weird, right? When you realize there's 300 million Americans and 7.5 billion people, like it's a really small percentage of the planet, right? Like, oh yeah, maybe this isn't normal, my life that I experience right now. So it is great. But we don't just want unfettered, unfiltered worldview engagement, right? Like that's not the idea. Even as an adult, like that's a major part of becoming an adult is recognizing, oh, I don't just go out and ingest any information I can find. Like I'm discerning. I take it, I hold it, I look at it from all angles and I go, is this true? Is it helpful? Is it right? Right? Like I have a standard with which I ingest information and entertainment and even individuals. And it doesn't mean that I don't leave a little box. It means when I leave a box, I am informed and equipped and loving and prepared. And that's like everything that our kids are extremely loving, but there's also a lot of naivety and there's a lot of danger in just sending a kid out there to completely unfiltered world engagement. So I don't believe that that is going to be a benefit. That's actually probably a detriment. There's a lot of topics that are sad and scary and inappropriate and false and otherwise needing critical attention that would benefit a younger mind to have an informed individual help them engage. So on your phone, on your family laptop, on your family computer, in a public space in your home, those are all great things. You don't need a private smartphone in order to quote unquote engage the world. That is, like sending your sheep to wolves. It's not a beneficial spot, but there are lots of downsides. Now, this is going to be a future conversation, but I want to list them here just to kind of add some teeth to this point. If the first one is there's minimal benefit, there's a lot of fairly well documented, and I'm being facetious. It's really well documented, some of these downsides. The first would be focus. The second would be bullying. The third would be happiness, and then pornography, overstimulation, sleep, and strangers, both the creepers and the outside influences that aren't vetted or filtered because of we're sending young people out to them. We will address those in another podcast. I do want to try to keep this one shorter, but there is research on each of those on the impact that is possible. It doesn't mean if you have a smartphone, then all these things will happen. It means we're making calculated decisions to help our kids reach their full potential, to point them towards the hope that is in Christ, that they can meet them. And we're living that out in front of them like we talked about last week, right? We have this testimony that we're sharing with them. And part of that testimony is trusting God and making decisions that are wise and going to put them in a healthy spot. So there are lots of downsides, and we can explain some of those to our kids. Again, some of those are pretty heavy depending on the age of your kid. Tread lightly, be wise in that. There's no reason just to freak your kid out or sound like a fearmonger. Just because it's real doesn't mean it has to be brought up in every single situation. And the third would be everything a child needs to do can be accomplished with a dumb phone or a family computer. Schools, if they demand online work, they're going to provide you some sort of resource. If they don't provide you some sort of resource, like if the school library doesn't have computers or they're not giving you one-to-one devices and they're demanding you turn things in online, that's going to be a conversation for your district. That is going to be really important. We're often seeing it's the opposite, right? We're being forced one-to-one devices, even if it's detrimental to our kids. We're having a hard time filtering that content. We're having a hard time having a conversation about, well, you need to focus on your schoolwork, even though that exact same device can still be on all these distracting apps and social media, and there's workarounds for all the safety stuff, right? Like, that's more of the direction we're dealing with. So everything our kids need to do can be most often done through a dumb phone. So then our phone and messaging can be done on a dumb phone. Social media and gaming should be accomplished either from public devices that are easier to walk away from and then re-enter the rest of their life, or even played in a public space, right? So a gaming device doesn't have to be on a phone now. It can be in the living room, and they can play that during their time, and that can be part of what the family does as the family. It's not something shameful that needs to be hidden away and done in secret. It can be actually part of what they do and enjoy, and then we can see the healthy normalcy of that, because that is possible. So let's talk for a minute then. If those are three reasons why we delay the giving of a smartphone, what is this thing with our phone that why can't we put it down? And I think that needs to be part of a bigger conversation because our smartphones and the apps and the games that are on them aren't what they used to be. So we've talked about this a little bit with video games, about how modern video games are actually designed differently, but that goes right into social media and even the way the phone itself works. And Facebook came out in 2004. It was this new idea. It was college students only. I vividly remember getting invited to be part of Facebook, and you could only join if you had a college email address. Right? So a friend with a college email address had to send me an invite and say, hey, join me on Facebook. And then I got to be on Facebook. But even if I wanted to invite a friend out of school, if they did not still have their college email address or they'd never gotten one, they couldn't join. It was just college kids at first. And it was this kind of quirky social space. There was a lot of like the early, oh, this person likes so-and-so, let's go look up who they are, right? Like there was a lot of that, which is still very common, but that was some of the first things that you were doing for this. It wasn't really a professional thing yet. It was just this early world of social media. And then in 2007, Steve Jobs launches the iPhone. And he comes out and says the killer app is making calls, right? And that comes from Digital Minimalism by Cal Newport. He's citing this and he's reminding us that when the smartphone came out, the idea wasn't to blow up the world as we know it. It was, hey, you're going to get a camera, you're going to get phone calls, and you're going to get some really slick like touch screen stuff, which was mind-blowing at the time. We basically took our iPod and we merged it with a phone, and now you can have your pictures and your music and your phone calls all in the same spot. Texting was sort of a thing, but it was not like it was a thing for younger people. It was not a thing you did professionally. It was still a thing that was catching on. And in that decade since, the average iPhone user checks his or her phone 85 times a day, right? People, this is Cal Newport says, people don't succumb to screens because they're lazy, but instead because billions of dollars have been invested to make this outcome inevitable, right? That the iPhone is not passive. It's not simply a tool. It is now a $1 trillion company, which has happened since this book was published. Apple is a $1 trillion company, and they make their money by selling hardware that ties in with software that makes us want to give our money in areas that maybe isn't actually a felt need. It's not something that I was looking for, but I'm kind of convinced, like, you know what? I think I really want to spend money on that. Bill Mayer concluded that in his Real Time in 2017 that tycoons of social media have to stop pretending they're friendly nerd gods building a better world and admit they're just tobacco farmers in t-shirts selling an addictive product to children. Because let's face it, checking your likes is the new smoking. Now that's I don't know. That's a big statement there, right? But there is truth behind this. That this is not, oh man, like these really cool guys made me this cool product. That's so nice of them. Like they're data mining your information so that they can send you ads, so that they can generate revenue, so that they can show a higher profit. The only problem in that whole equation is behavioral psychology, that we're not as tough and mentally strong as we'd like to believe, and we actually can be convinced we need stuff we never wanted. And then when we start to give enough data, they can actually do that really effectively. They know our search habits, they know our age group, they know our friend group, they know our purchasing, right? And they are now able to sell us stuff. And we're basically going to say, yeah, that seems good. I now want that thing. That can be problematic for focus, which is what we're talking about here with this smartphone, with Drool Tech in general, because we are going to be given basically an endless number of options for distraction, and they're all going to be custom tailored to me and to you based on your search habits and your friend group and your purchasing habits, right? Which means they are going to be interesting to us. So I was with a friend the other day, and this friend went to go find a phone or find an address on their phone. So they were like, oh yeah, I need to get that for you. It was for Flint and Iron. They went to the phone, opened it up, and not 45 seconds later, I hear a video playing. And I was like, hey, what are you doing? Like, oh, I just was watching this video. I was like, you were getting me an address. Like you went to your phone for a specific task. It was a tool. You have a contact list. In that contact list, there's an address, right? Within 45 seconds of opening the phone, they were hit with a notification to this video, right? And I literally sat there for probably 90 seconds of this video, just waiting to see if it would wear off. And I was like, what are you doing? Like, oh, I'm watching this video. Right. But what about the address? Like, well, how are they going to get the $100 bill from underneath the wine bottle, right? Like, how does it happen? This video was custom tailored for this individual, right? That is not an accident. And the level of distraction we can experience is not helping us, right? It is actually training us that, well, that's where I go for fun. So now if I get bored, well, I need my phone. I want to go look at this one thing. I'm going to see if they sent me a new notification. And I become a consumer of whatever is being sent rather than a user of a tool. And that's when that shift from tech using me happens instead of me using tech. But what we're going to look at then is, all right, we understand that our time and our attention can be distracted. We know that Proverbs 4:23 tells us to keep our hearts with all vigilance, for from it flows the springs of life, right? Our heart's not just not just our attention, but the things we willingly give our focus to, because our focus becomes more of what we worship and more of what we care for. Again, Romans 8 talks about that idea that those who set their minds on the things of the flesh, right, live to the things of the flesh, and those who set their minds on the things of the Spirit experience life and things of the Spirit. That there's that part of belief is choosing where we put our attitude and choosing where we put our minds. And so we want to make sure we're in control of that. When we make a dumb phone, there's 4 really good ways to do this. We take a smartphone and we kind of strip away some of those distractions. The first is we can set our phone to grayscale. So if you need some convincing, here's why it works. According to former Google design ethicist Tristan Harris, who's founded the Center for Humane Tech, going grayscale removes positive reinforcements and dampens that urge that you and I have to keep loading up social media feeds and mobile games and doing whatever we might want to do. This idea is, and this is a quote from him, the idea is that your phone will be less fun to use. Instagram becomes a river of drab grayness, web articles are bland to the point of boring, and games lose all visual appeal, right? This idea of going grayscale will actually show us what is a tool about my phone. Where am I using it because I need it? And where am I using it because I'm kind of bored and I kind of want to feel good? I tell you, I'm on grayscale. It was really depressing for the first week or so, where I'd look at my phone and I just want that pop of color and then I don't have it, right? And I would actually find myself like looking at my phone, seeing gray and just kind of going, right? Like I'm looking outside at a rainy day or something, because that's what I was doing with my phone. I was looking to it like I look to blue skies. I just kind of want that reminder that there's a world out there and it's gray. And that is putting my phone in when my phone becomes an equivalent to blue skies, like we have an issue, right? They're not the same. And we should keep them separate. I should not be supplanting the joys of nature and good weather and outdoors with the simple titillation and scintillation of my smartphone. So the first thing we can do is remove some of that false glamour that comes with the colors and the pop and the speed of those colors in my grayscale. The second thing I can do is I can turn off all notifications. We're talking all of them. If you go to your settings, you can actually turn off the banners, the badges, the little pop-down menus. You can turn off any kind of notification or number that would pop up or color that will tell you. So when you're reading your Bible in the morning on your phone, you won't get something that drops down that says so-and-so really needs that project. You will not get any kind of notification from an app that says 3 new people followed you. You will not get any text reminders at the top that say, hey, you've got 13, or any email reminders that say, hey, you've got 172 unread. Like none of those numbers are there. You look at your phone, it's just the apps. You have to actually open it for it to tell you what's there and what's new, which has been crazy. It turns out I'm not very good at actually setting time to check my phone. I just kind of did it whenever it told me to. So I've been doing this for 2 weeks now, and it's nuts. I've actually missed some conversations because people will reach out to me and it doesn't ping me in the middle of my writing, right? I'll look and be like, oh, I was writing when that happened. I never actually made a time to go check my phone. It's 7 p.m. now, right? So we do want to build in the habit. It's a tool. I want to communicate. So I put it aside when I'm writing and doing important things, but then I can say, hey, I'm going to go check my phone, 15 minutes. Make sure I get back to my stuff that I need to get back to, and then jump back to my tasks. We turn off those notifications. It helps us. This way, there's really 3 things. This comes from The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry by John Mark Comer. In order to check, you must unlock your phone as the first step. Then you're going to click the text box. And then you're going to see if you have any new messages. And John Mark Comer really nails it on that one, right? That I've experienced myself, that making a couple steps isn't going to make us any better, but it makes us more intentional. And I think that is what we're looking at when we look at our tech. How can we make it intentional? And a dumb phone will help us. Third thing we can do is we can take our email off our phone. I've done this, and again, this is a nutty process because if it's so natural to just, well, I checked my social media, I did this other thing, I'll just check my email while I stand here in line. Like, best case scenario, I'm going to have no important emails. Like, that's the best case scenario. Worst case scenario, I bump into a fire that is going on right now, and now I'm standing in a line trying to get something else done. I'm not able to give this thing my full attention. Instead, I need to schedule my emails. I need to make them intentional. They need to not just be a way I distract myself. They need to be a way that I can be effective and intentional. So remove the actual app off your phone, go through a browser when you need it, and make it so it's one more click away. Now you have to log in to get there, right? And it's not something that's constantly pursuing you. You're intentionally going to it. It's a tool now, but you have pushed back. I love John Mark Comer on this one also put this point that he sets 2 days a week where he's going to do his email. He has an auto reminder that says, hey, I'm not checking my email except on these days. I'll get back to you. And then on those days, he goes through all of his emails and he doesn't do any other tasks until every email's been responded to and either archived or deleted, right? He will get back to 0 before he moves on to his next task. Now that's pretty extreme. Not everyone has a flexible schedule where they can just schedule 2-3 hours for email, but it stops a 5-minute email from becoming a 20-minute email that then drags us into a bunch of other things that gets distracting because it becomes, this is our email time. Now I'm going to knock these emails out, right? And we get to be intentional with the relationships. Again, it keeps it a tool rather than a distraction. We've heard from lots of business professionals that you don't start your day with your email, right? Because you're letting someone else set your schedule. And this is what this is doing here. We're not letting our smartphone set our response habits. We're not just waiting for something to happen to us. We're going to our email and we're using it. And finally, we're going to remove social media apps. That's right. Instead of going to Instagram or Facebook right before bed because you just want that last little update. Again, what's our best case scenario? Like best case scenario, no one wrote. No tragedies have occurred in the world, and no one's fired up about anything in the world of politics. Like that's best case scenario, 15 to 20 minutes before bed. Worst case scenario, something really exciting or something really terrible has just occurred, and you are going to get both the vitriol of the internet personas, and you're going to get really stirred up because you care about this stuff, and that's going to happen right before bed. So we can still check social media, but we keep it in its proper place. We don't just run to it anytime we want, and we make sure that it's waiting for us. So in removing these, that means that I don't just have Instagram on my phone anymore. I don't just spend time scrolling through feeds or even checking to see, like, did anyone comment? Did anything new happen? What's going on now, right? Even though I just checked 2 hours ago. Like, I don't have to be that in control of my social media. I can post daily, right? I can update information. I can respond to individuals, but those come when I make time to do it, not just when I can click one tab, right? It requires a couple steps again. And let's be serious, for me, it means looking at my password almost every time because I forget. So this is a nice way to stop ourselves from mindlessly scrolling. If you heard that and you're like, man, why do I even have a smartphone? Like you've heard these 4. So we've got 4 ways to make it a dumb phone. We go grayscale. We turn off all of our notifications. We remove our email. We remove social media apps. We now have a phone that is far more tool than Drool tech, but it's still a smartphone. Some of us might go, man, what could I do instead? And here's some alternatives. If you've kind of wrestled through this or you are wrestling through this with your child and you have not been able to find a compromise, here are some really cool options. The first is you absolutely can just go buy a dumb phone. You can get a flip phone or a slide phone or anything that is not like maybe not even have a QWERTY keyboard. It's got just like you have to tap the button 3 times to get to the letter U or whatever. So you can go buy those. You can go to T-Mobile or Verizon and actually pick one up. Or you can buy one on eBay and then get it swapped over to your phone number. That does work too. You can find them for probably $50 or less. You can go and buy a phone like the Gab wireless phone. So Gab wireless actually has a more modern phone. It has a camera, it has all those functionalities, but the software does not have any app store. It does not have any ability to message text or do group chats or any of that, those types of communication. So it's a smartphone look. It still has a camera. They can still take video and pictures, but it has no social media, no games, no app store, no internet, no just browsing of the web. So it is a dumb phone. It just looks like a smartphone. And basically that saves you the worry of having to find out what apps do we need to protect my child, right? With the Covenant Eyes and the Bark and the Net Nanny or the Circle, like whatever we're trying to do here. This really stops a lot of that. And it makes it a very easy one-stop shop. So that's Gab wireless. And it's, I think $65 right now. It's normally $100, but it's about $65 for that phone, and then you pay $20 for text and voice a month for the actual data plan, and that's just unlimited text and voice. You can also go with a punked phone. This is kind of the hipster version. It's very pretty and sleek. It's not inexpensive, but if you happen to have some spare cash, you can use this thing. So there's no apps or icons, animation, special effects. It's got real physical buttons like an old school phone that you type onto it. You can text, but it's not going to be seamless because you are going to have to do the type 3 times to get a single letter, right? Using the 10-digit version. But it is all the things you need, other than there's no maps on that one. So if you need your GPS, you'll have to have a separate device or print it out before you leave from a computer or whatever your direction mode might be. The next one would be the Light Phone 2. Again, it's not the cheapest option. The Gab Wireless would be the cheapest option, but it does have this focus of how can we get as little as possible onto this device so that I can live kind of unplugged. So there are ways that if you know you're going to have a season where you want to be kind of on the grid light, where you don't want to be fully connected with all those things, but you still want to have your phone and you want to have that backup of, well, I'll keep my smartphone in a drawer at home or whatever. Those are also options. The main point that we're trying to get out of this is not, man, if we get these smartphones taken care of, we make them dumb phones, then we'll magically be good. A lot of the problems we're running into with attitude, with focus, with sleep, with intentionality of relationships, we're being undermined because these phones are not passive in the process. They are designed to distract us and designed to sell to us. We become the product now that these companies sell to advertisers and other businesses that they use to generate their revenue. Now, Amazon, I will say most of its revenue comes from hosting Amazon worldwide server services. So AWS is the way they make most of their money. They're not making it through Prime or Alexa or any of that, but they are still collecting our data and using that to sell us things. They're not just providing a service. Google would be probably the greatest offender in that, since they don't really have many products they sell. They mainly sell to people who use their quote unquote free products. So when we're using smartphones, if we're finding we're getting distracted by our apps, by just the amount of attention we're giving it. If you don't know if you're distracted, you can ask your family and pray about it, right? Ask God to show you, where in my life am I being intentional with my relationships and with my tech? And where in my life is this really becoming something I'm putting my hope in? And I'm believing that I need this or I even deserve this. And this is normal and it's fine and I'm all good. Maybe that would be kind of a point of caution. And you can look at that again. But whatever it is, we can make our smartphones dumb. And I would challenge you to do that and talk that out with your kids, especially if you have a kid over 10 who's just really wanting that smartphone. Talk out the why. Why do you want the smartphone? Talk about the need. You say you need it to do these things. Let's talk about what you actually need. Below the age of 16, there's very few things you need on a smartphone that can't be done through a family computer or another device that's more public and less mobile. But as we talk about this, remember we're talking about keeping tech in its proper place. And we remember that we as parents and we as young consumers, so our kids, are not passive in the process. We're not just waiting for the next thing to happen to us. We are driving out and believing that God has a purpose for us, and that in that purpose we get to love others. And we want to remove anything that distracts us from God's love for us or our ability to love and serve others in real life. Not just get fired up and go on a rant on Twitter or social media or shut everything off because I just don't want to deal with it anymore. We still need to be engaged and in the conversation and knowledgeable about what's going on. But we don't want to put ourselves or our kids in a position where we're being sold a bill of goods and we are believing something is super duper important when it's actually just us seeing it a lot in really good design. And now we believe we need something we never wanted. So that's our kind of idea on how do we make a dumb phone. It is designed to help us consume. So smartphones might be a problem for a lot of us. This wasn't exhaustive. I hope you understand this isn't prescriptive. I'm not saying it's for everyone, but I do hope that it helps you feel confident in how you can have this conversation with your kids. There's 4 steps to make it a dumb phone. There's 3 reasons why our kids really don't need smartphones. If they have a smartphone already and you're not seeing any negative sides of it, that's awesome. You probably don't need to change anything. Just make sure there's accountability. This idea of, well, they're a good kid. Well, we've all lived through that, right? Some point in our lives, someone probably believed we were just a good kid and didn't ask any questions about where we were going or who we were going with or what we were going to do while we were there. And those questions might have saved us some heartache and some hardship down the road, right? That's what we're doing with our kids and our smartphones, right? We're just asking that question. Hey, where are you going? Why do you need this? What's happening? I love you. I'm not afraid of you. I'm not scared of you. I love you. And I want to make sure that I provide you all the things a parent should, which is every opportunity to see God at work. And anything that distracts you from that, I want to remove and replace with something else that's awesome. So maybe that's a dumb phone. Maybe that's another alternative, but that's our conversation. In the future, we will get into those kind of 7 things that are detrimental, that smartphones can really cause some problems with. We will get to those, but I hope that this was encouraging. If it was, would you please take some time to rate and review if you have not yet? Thank you so much for listening to this. Share it with a friend if you think it would be encouraging to them. Again, reach out to me, Nathan@flintandiron.org, or DM us, Flint and Iron on Instagram. Your thoughts, your questions, your opinions. You don't have to agree with us. We are not scared of that. We're a big boy and girl. We can deal with disagreement, but we do want to be part of the conversation with you as you work to help your kiddos and your family love God and use tech. So thanks for being a part of it, and look forward to talking again in the future.